Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and we have another outstanding show for you. It's really easy. When you have great guests, great books, my job is so simple because I get to have an absolutely outstanding show. And this show is no doubt. I mean, this is a no doubter. I get to bring back a friend of mine who wrote this book called Thriving: How to Create Healthier, Happier, and More Prosperous Life. His name is Rand Selig. The book is outstanding. And when he was here last, we only got through basically one chapter and we touched on gratitude for about 2 minutes. And so there's so much more to this book, and it's so good. And it is so rich and full of, I believe, practical guidance for mindsets and behavior for people to achieve the success, the purpose, the meaning in their life that they're looking for. And that is what makes this book, I think, so incredibly special. And I've had the privilege of reading it not only a couple times, but then going back through the notes that I take several times, 30 pages of notes that I've taken. And it's such a great book, and one that, quite honestly, I was glad that we're doing it again. I was just so glad to do it again because these are such great reminders for me personally, but I think they will be great reminders for you to live your life by, because I believe that these principles are timeless. I believe they're for any age. I feel that they are for any stage of life. I don't care if you're C-suite or if your C means that you're cleaning out the gutters. These are timeless and good for you, and just great. So I hope you will tune in. I hope you tell your friends to tune into the show. Whether you listen to it by podcast, watching us on DBTV, thank you very much, or listening to us on radio from coast to coast, thank you for doing that. So before we get to Rand and the book, let's do what we do every week real quickly. We're four-part people: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual people. I want you to check in every week to determine, how you're doing in each of these areas, right? The fact of the matter is we don't stay static. If we're not growing, we're dying. So we need to be taking care of ourselves in all four of these areas, which Rand does a beautiful job talking about, by the way. And he talks about actually all four of these areas in his book: physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Growth and more, because he even talks about financially in here too. So here's how it works. You evaluate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being in this area is just awful. 10 being in this area, I don't know that I can get any better. Right? 5 being average. So say, for example, physically, how would you rate yourself when it comes to getting enough exercise, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, eating right? Right? Don't worry about the number. If it's a 2, we're just going to call that a starting point. Okay? That's where we grow from. It's where we grow. Listen to me. It's where we grow from. Doesn't make you bad. It just means that that's where we're going to start to grow from. Okay? If you're a 7, okay, a little harder. Tweaks are a little smaller. We may not be getting to a 7.5, but we may want to just get to a 7.1, right? Because as we get higher in the numbers, those tweaking of getting better becomes different. So that's your first number. Okay, second number is your mental intellectual number. And the fact of the matter is, we have to be an active participant in our mental intellectual growth. You have to be doing something actively to grow in wisdom and knowledge and understanding. In fact, Rand talks about this in the book, is that if you want to stay young, you've got to keep your brain active and cognitively moving. If you're aging, right, get to reading a book. I had a client yesterday. She's older client. She's in her 70s. And we were sitting down, and I asked her, as we were going through these areas, and I asked her about, what she's doing to mentally, intellectually stimulate herself. And she says, well, I'm doing some art. And I said, well, that's great. That's good. And she said, I used to love to read. She goes, I stopped reading. And I was like, really? I said, how long ago has that been? She goes, oh gosh, I can't even remember last time. She said, and I loved reading I love reading books about history and autobiographies. And I said, and growth and learning. And I said, do you think it's time to pick up a book? And she said, you know what? I do. And I said, there's a bookstore about 7 blocks from here.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, it's my next stop. That's wanting to grow, right? Mentally, intellectually. So what is that number for you? And then the third number, of course, is emotionally. We break the emotionally up really simple. How well are you able to control your emotions under stress and pressure or grief, right? And then how well are you able to tap into your emotions, the emotions of other people, right? Which requires you to listen and be empathetic, which coincidentally Rand talks about in his book. What number would you give yourself there? And then the fourth dimension of ourselves is the spiritual dimension. And we are spiritual people. Matter of fact, you can argue that we are spiritual people who live in temporary bodies. Is a pretty good argument. And in fact, if you were to eliminate the physical, the mental, and the emotional, there is still something left. And it would be the spiritual. It's still left. And you go, well, I don't believe in that. And yet we walk by faith every day of our lives. You've made plans for the future and believe they're going to occur. The chair you're sitting on, you believe is not going to break. The car you're driving in, you believe is not going to shut down. Wherever you're at, you believe that there is something more. That's faith. That's a spiritual part of you. And what brings you back to joy or centeredness in the midst of chaos? Is it God? Is it nature? Is it meditation? Is it something else? And is it working? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you evaluate yourself spiritually? Those 4 areas are like the air in the tires of your car. If one of the tires are too low, right, the car is going to veer. It's going to be very difficult to move the car. And it's going to be very difficult to be able to maneuver it, and it's troublesome. And by the same token, if all 4 tires are low, then what happens? Well, eventually you're going to ruin the car. So what we want to do is we want to bring up our air and our tires to the right height. And speaking of someone who's done that so well, his name is Rand Selig. He's an accomplished entrepreneur. He's a coach, conservationist, board member. He shares his extensive expertise in this book. New book, Thriving. He's managed hundreds of complex projects in his career and has run his own financial services firm for over 35 years. He has lived and worked all over the world, having a high set point for happiness and being relentlessly positive has been valuable to him in overcoming his challenges and his setbacks. He's relentlessly positive. He believes we all can be the author of our own story. And he's going to join us right now to do part 2 of Thriving. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show and welcome back to A New Direction, Rand Selig. Welcome back, Rand.
Coach Jay, it's just a delight to come back and join you again. And thanks for so many of your marvelous, warm comments.
Oh, you're very welcome. I went back through this. It's so much fun. I get to go back through this book again. And I had a blast doing it, right? Because I was thinking about all the things that we talked about, and I listened to the show that we did together, and it was really good. And the first chapter, which we never got through, really, we barely got through, was called Building Character, which is the first chapter of the book, which is so important, but we had to build character. and I said, you got to come back because there's more to the book than chapter 1. so we brought you back, and I want to jump into chapter 2, which is called Relationships with Ourselves. And you say that the most important relationship we will ever have is the one that we have with ourselves. And in our relationship with ourselves, we can look at each aspect of self, the physical self, the emotional self, the social self. Is any of this familiar, folks? The intellectual self, the spiritual self. It may take courage and some honest examination. Talk to us about our relationship with ourselves, why it's important, and perhaps why we don't look at it as well as we should, that relationship.
I think very simply, it's like a concentric set of circles. It starts with that first circle, which is you. If that's solid, you're doing well, you have a good relationship with yourself, then you can expand from there and have relationships with other people and go out in the world and do good work. If the core is not good, you're going to struggle. And doesn't matter kind of how hard you work on all the outside circles, that inner circle is going to plague you.
Mhm.
It's just so basic and so central to who we are and what we're about in the world. And why don't people do more with that? Well, there are different answers to that question,
Mhm.
but it's not easy work. It's not easy work to take a look. You gotta be willing to kind of be naked with yourself.
Right.
And there may be some parts of you that you don't particularly like. You don't feel good about. You're regretting things, but you gotta own up to that. You gotta open your heart to say, "This is who I am," and if you're like me, you're going to say, "I'm going to work on those issues. I'm going to try to be the best person I can be." And I know now, having looked at myself, I've got to work on this, that, and a third thing. I can't work on 10 things at a time. That means like doing no work. But I'm going to pick these one, two, maybe three priorities in this coming year. I'm going to focus on that.
I think it's interesting because, when you're in a dating relationship, you will do whatever you can do to learn that other person, right? Learn what they like and what they don't like. You will learn everything about them. We get infatuated with that other person dating. But then when it comes to ourselves, I don't know that any of us have ever really dated ourselves. I mean, like really learned, who we are. And I think we take our own personal relationship for granted
Mm,
often.
mm, mm,
It's kind of like what happens in marriages quite often, right? We marry a person, and when we're first married, there's all this infatuation, and we're in love with each other, and it's just all happiness, right? And then you have your first little fight, or you start to find out that uh, one or the other doesn't like the toothpaste, squeezed in the middle, and whatever the case may be, and we end up taking that relationship for granted
mm,
as well. And I often wonder if it's our own laziness
mm,
that
mm,
doesn't do that. Because you say in this chapter, because of the habits of the mind, we are often our own worst enemies. We
mm.
shoot ourselves in the foot. We undermine ourselves with saboteurs, our internal enemies.
Yeah.
And and I wonder if that's because we've just not really dated ourselves.
Well, I've never heard anybody talk about it that way, but I like it. I think that's very intriguing, especially when you lead into when you have a new relationship with somebody else and you're all in and you're interested. You're asking questions. You're present. You're so present. You've
Mhm.
got that big smile on your face. You want to touch them. There's all these marvelous, exciting things happening. And if you can bring that into the relationship with yourself,
Mm.
and of course, there's the toothpaste stuff. Of course, there is. That's okay. That's okay. Not
Yeah.
not a problem. And you can. I like to tell people. Don't listen to yourself because that's a tape recording that maybe I'm not good at math. I'm not a very nice person. I'm whatever. It's like a series of possible put downs or limitations. I say don't listen to yourself. Instead, talk to yourself. Talk to yourself. Hey, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to do something cool today. I'm going to meet somebody new. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be generous and kind today. And so talk to yourself with encouragement, and I'll even say with love.
Mm. You talk also here about one of the most critical choices that we make when it comes to a relationship with ourselves is whether or not we feel like a victim,
Oof,
and it's a choice. Dig
choice.
into that a little bit more for us on the victim when we start to become the victim.
Well, we're living in a world right now where there's a lot of folks running around who feel victimized.
Mm,
It could be, political events somewhere, local or further away, and the victimization mentality is, it's being done to me.
mm,
Um, it's unfair, and you feel yourself. You can just drink a lot of that nasty juice and believe that you're powerless. So when you lose your own power, what nature hates the vacuum. So what you fill that with is fear and anger. And that, look at think about all those words. That's just not a great place to be. Powerless, full of anger, full of fear. Um, I have read a lot about Nelson Mandela. One of the projects I worked on was in South Africa right after he became president. And one of his great quotes, my book has lots of quotes, is, live your life with hope and not with fear.
mm.
And his life is a perfect example of that. After 30 years in prison, he comes out and he emerges as a powerful, positive, encouraging leader for all his people in South Africa. It's a great message, a great story.
I've recently been digging into Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning,
Mm.
and of course, he was a Holocaust survivor and who lost his entire family, basically. And he has a great quote, and that I think most people know. He said, "They could take everything from you, but the one thing they cannot take is your ability to choose." And you can choose what you are going to feel today and how you're going to respond. They can change the circumstances, but they cannot take away your ability to choose your response. And I think that that's so important for people. It's an important message for everyone to hear that we have a choice. Yes, there are things that are bad and they happen to us, and I'm sorry, but we do have a choice of how we choose to respond back to them. And I believe that's a big part of your message.
It's one of the central points of my book. I come at it countless times in different ways, but we have enormous power to choose. We choose all the time. It's kind of like when people say voting, they're not voting once or twice a year. They're voting every day, what
Right,
to buy and, who to spend time with.
right.
They're voting on, what emotions to have. And this is enormous power. And Viktor Frankl, what a story he has as well.
Right.
And to talk about it the way he does, that yes, it happened, something happened, and but now I'm making a choice.
Yeah.
I'm making a choice as to whether I'm still going to stand tall and stand for the things I believe in, or am I going to shrink and be upset about it and point the finger at somebody else?
Yeah. W beyond this victim mentality, you also talk about, in terms of relationship with ourself, is that we need self-renewal, including, relaxing regularly, resting when needed, and sleeping well.
Yeah.
Talk about, self-renewal real quick.
Well, there's the regular self renewal, which is, I think, on a weekly basis. I highly recommend everybody take a day off a week. And it may be your Saturday, it may be your Sunday, it may be some other day of the week, depending on, other things going on in your work and other commitments. But when you do that, you come back refreshed and more potent, more powerful, more with better ideas and more engaging, a better person to be around. And if you don't, what happens is you gradually begin to drain the battery to the point where you ultimately fail. And that's not a pretty scene. You fail physically, you begin to fail mentally, you emotionally turn into, not that person that you want to be anymore. So this renewal on a regular basis and sleeping well. I've been talking to my wife. She does not sleep well. I said, go do the sleep test. They've perfected it now. You can do it at home. It's so cinchy. And they'll tell you very quickly, you've got some sleep problems, and here's how to deal with that. Um, sometimes it's some habits. Habits are important. What you do in the hour before you go to bed, but sleeping well and then taking a day off, one day a week, and recharge the battery. You can have fun. You can do all kinds of things on the day you're taking off, but don't go shopping. Don't plug in to your email and your social media stuff. Stay away from that.
Yeah.
Longer term is a renewal that I also talk about in my book. I really recommend it. I call it a sabbatical. That's often reserved for the academic world. But when you're taking multiple weeks off, not just a vacation, maybe it's months off, and you've got to really organize yourself to be able to do that. I've taken 4 sabbaticals, and I did them in the very pressing years when I was raising my family and my career was, I was pressing hard. But I went away. All my clients said, "We'll wait for you. We will wait for you." And I took a bit of a hit on my income that year, but it was so worth it. I came back with clarity about who I was, clarity about the world I was in, what really mattered. And if you're just in the day to day, even with your day off a week, it's hard to get that perspective. Taking extra time off can be so valuable. If you're working on a project, which is what we did, then you're grounded by the project. But if you're just kind of doing an extended travel thing, then I say, be sure you know why you're going away. Have some goals and objectives. Maybe have a list of books that you want to read or things you really want to chew on about your life, and keep a journal so that you come back, and don't just fall back into the same old place and the same old, I'll call it, rut that you were in. Go forward.
That's beautiful. His name is Rand Selig. The book is entitled Thriving: How to Create a Healthier, Happier, and More Prosperous Life. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, Epic Physical Therapy, whether you're recovering from an injury, surgery, suffering everyday aches and pains, having difficulty performing activities of daily living, maybe you're a professional athlete who just wants to move and improve the way you are feeling and moving. Listen, the elite team at Epic Physical Therapy will provide you with a customized treatment plan specifically for you. So when you're ready for epic relief, epic recovery, epic results, don't look any further. Go to epicpt.com. It's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft Team Realtors for more than 39 years. They've been at the top of the real estate game, but really what they're at the top is they're at the top of the life transition game. And you go, whoa. Life transition, what does that mean? Well, look, folks, every place you've ever lived, has it not been a life transition for you? Right? Whether you sell a house, buy a house, there's a life transition involved. Well, they know how to take the stress or reduce the stress from that part of your life transition. So when you're ready for your next life transition, whether it's buying a house or selling your house, start with Linda Craft Team Realtors. It's lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend Rand Selig, book, Thriving: How to Create a Healthier, Happier, and More Prosperous Life. I would like to say a healthier, happier, and more prosperous you. How about that? By Rand Selig. You can find out more about him by going to randselig.com. RANDSELIG.com is available for you. In this chapter 2, yes, we're still in chapter 2. Maybe for all I know, this is the only chapter we'll do today. But it's so good. I don't want to leave it without talking about a few things, because this topic about a relationship with ourselves, and this is a subtopic called aging well. And you said aging well. A couple things. It has some factors: physical, mental, social, being positive, having purpose, etc., so forth. We'll talk about those. But you also say that we can age well only if we retain much of our youthful enthusiasm and imagination. People with a young psychology enjoy taking calculated risks and embarking on new adventures. Talk about us, because we're all aging, right? I mean, Rand, and I hate to admit this, but I color my hair because do not want it. I do not want the white hair. Okay. I'm coloring my hair. I don't want it. I'm not ready for it. I'm not ready for the gray. And it makes me feel good about me. And some people say, well, that you're not living authentically. I go, no, I am living authentically because I'm having more enthusiasm. I've got more energy. I'm more positive than I've ever been. So you know what? If coloring my hair gives me that, so be it. So talk to us about aging well.
Well, as you say, Coach Jay, everybody ages, but not everybody ages well. So there are a number of things that we can do. They are within our bailiwick to get on with them. Aging well is about vitality. It's not about longevity. So, what kind of energy are you bringing? What kind of self, are you bringing that best self, the cheerful self? Are you positive? Are you optimistic? Being positive and optimistic actually adds 7 to 8 years to your life. This is statistically, studies have shown that. So you really want to get on with that. Next Tuesday, I'm going to be speaking at a retirement home. By the way, I think we need to change that word retirement home because that sounds like going off the cliff to nowhere. Which a lot of people do, unfortunately. And I've had a lot of clients who, after I sold their company, they didn't do very well because their social network shrunk, because they didn't have interesting things to chew on, interesting challenges, and their sense of self kind of shrunk. Nobody just wants to be the guy who's about as important as the G in lasagna. Yeah.
That's good.
So you highlighted, Coach Day, a few of these. They're not surprises to anyone who's listening. It's being positive. It's having purpose. I can talk more about that. It's being grateful. Even if that means reframing the bad situation, so you could say, well, what was the good part of that? Why am I appreciative of some aspect of this? Being curious, this being a lifelong learner, makes things so much more fun. Having humor, oh my gosh, and not just humor because it was a funny joke like the G in lasagna, but because you can also laugh at yourself, which is so important. So important. You don't get all uptight. You laugh and you relax when you laugh.
Right.
You stop self-sabotaging. Oh my gosh. I mean, why not just shrink the size of the room so you're bumping into walls all the time? Self-sabotaging is so limiting. It's a choice. All of these are choices.
Right.
Learning to let go is another one of these secrets. I'm about to reveal all these secrets. Learning to forgive yourself and others. And then I end up with not romantic love, but being love as a way of being as a person. That's being kind. That's being respectful. That's being interested in somebody, knowing their name, asking them questions, acts of loving kindness, whether it's to animals or Mother Nature, other people. All of that is being love. These are my 9 secrets to aging well.
Selflessness is what I hear come out of all that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That selflessness is difficult for us, I think.
It is. It is. And not to confuse anybody, because we're in chapter 2 talking about the relationship with yourself. But being selfless means that even when you have your core, like being strong with a strong core, then you have the ability to go out into the world. And selfless is like that too, that you become more invisible. It's not about your little aches and pains and, whiny stuff. You've got that handled. That's in check. That's in control. What you're now focusing on is other people, other situations. And in the process of focusing outward like that, become more invisible, less central to this dramatic story.
Right. So good. And it ties right into chapter 3, which is managing ourself. Right. So we move from All right, our relationship with ourselves to managing ourselves. And this is where you start talking about our habits and our routines,
Mm.
and you start moving in there. And there's a lot that we're talking about. I get a lot of authors who talk about habit formation and our routines. And what's interesting is we're pretty good at bad habits. We're less good at developing good habits. Help us with our habit and routine formation a little bit here, and when managing ourselves.
Well, habits, I think, are like a lot of things that I'm recommending in my book is just the self-awareness. Find out what your habits are.
Mm.
Take a look, write them down. You got to, sometimes it's not so easy. Like, how are you spending your time? A lot of people, my clients over the years, how are you spending your time? Well, I don't really know. Am I spending 10 hours a week on X or Y or Z? I don't know. I said, well, no surprise. I mean, time goes by kind of quickly, and you're busy, or I like to say you're delightfully scheduled. So, okay, roll forward, but write it down over the next week until I come back and visit with you again. Write down how you're spending your time. I think you will be surprised. I think you'll be surprised at that. And then you can analyze that to say, hey, are the things I'm spending time with, is that the best use of my time? Am I doing things I'm really good at? Am I doing things I like doing? If not, then we need to kind of switch things up a little bit. And so this whole thing about habits is back to the same point. Do an inventory. Check out what your habits are. Start with the first thing in the morning. Do you roll over and catch another 10 minutes of Z? Do you get up a little bit earlier and jump out of bed? Do you do some exercise in the morning to get the blood flowing? And do the night before, do you write down what you're going to do the next day? I am relentless about that. I
Wow.
do that on a monthly basis for the month, a weekly basis, and the day. So the night before, I take a look at what's coming up. First of all, I want to be on time for everything. So if I've got a 8:30 call or a meeting, I know I need to, do the logistics to make that all happen. So I flow the day, and I create it in such a way I can move things around. So I've got my habits. I know what my habits are, and I know what some of my bad habits are. Some of the things that I've done and I'm working on is I'll be a little snarky.
Mm.
I'll be, I like humor. So but it's facetious, which means that there's a little dig at the end of the piece of humor. Well, nobody likes that. You feel the brunt of that. So I've actually worked to eliminate that. Funny is funny, but not at somebody's expense. So habits, do an inventory of the habits, and then say, are these serving me? How can I make it even better? If I'm doing it 3 times a week, can I try to do it 5 times a week? If it's a bad habit, okay, I'm going to disengage. I've just finished reading a great book. Here I'm talking about my book, but I just read another great book, Atomic Habits, James Clear. Oh, he breaks this down, Coach Jay, in great ways about how to get rid of the bad habits. And why atomic? Not because it's the atomic bomb thing, but because it's tiny little pieces that stack up like coins. And before you know it, if you're doing this routinely, practicing and practicing, you got a big stack of coins.
Mm. That's beautiful. I, I'm moving on along these lines. You talk about creating a frame of mind, and you say to create a successful frame of mind, you need a healthy diet. And I love it because you've actually included the ingredients: a healthy diet of vision, communication, inspiration, and integrity is part of the ingredients. But then you say it often might help to add these nutrients: stillness, silence, and solitude. Talk to us about this little recipe this little a genius recipe that you have of these wonderful ingredients.
I think you could take those and write a whole book about them and have many stories and interview people. They are real nuggets. They are gems, each and every one of them. And the additional items of the solitude and quiet, is a critical thing. We live in a very extroverted world, and there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of stuff coming at us all the time. Our wheels are spinning so fast sometimes, like the wheels are going to spin, not just the air out of the tires, like you were talking about, Coach Jay, but the wheels fly off your vehicle. Talk about driving without four wheels on your car. That doesn't really work. So the solitude that allows you to calm down, to slow down, to do that inventory work, to appreciate, to sort of say, what am I grateful for? Oh my gosh, look at this. Uh, some people feel gratitude when they look at somebody else's situation and say, wow, I'm glad I'm not in that relationship. You come back from a dinner party and you say to your spouse, aren't we the lucky ones? Would you want to have to go home with that one? That kind of stuff. So sometimes it helps to do a comparison thing. But I think basically it's looking inside yourself, and that solitude, where you find it, whether it's meditating. Some people meditate every day and it's quiet, and maybe they have some music on. That's the kind of music that just gets them to, flow. Or maybe it's like in my case, going out in nature, taking a walk, and slowing things down. So you actually open your eyes. I know a lot of people who love the environment, and we go on a walk with them and they say, oh, and that plant's name and the Latin name is, and I say, I appreciate that you're knowledgeable about it, but when I have to shift to that part of my brain, I'm not seeing, I'm not appreciating. So let's do both. If you want to feel good about the Latin name for the plant, go for it. That's great. But let's be sure to take a few minutes and just observe. Let's smell. Let's use our senses and magic. It's magic. It's a bit of magic.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Uh, you're as we finish up this chapter 3 on managing ourselves. You say something here that I think is just critical. Managing ourselves as well as other people, and I'm quoting you here, also requires a resilient frame of mind.
Mm.
Talk about the resiliency issue, because I think resilience is so important mentally.
Charles Darwin said, it's not the smartest people, it's not the strongest people who are going to survive. It's the people who adapt. And that's really what resiliency is all about. Life is changing all the time. Who we were and what the world looked like 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 50 years ago, of course, is very different than the world we're living in today. And so to be effective, to be accomplished, to have a fulfilling life, you need to adapt. You need to have an ability to flow forward and have that resiliency. It's also like a little bit of a rubber band. You spring back. If you're weak mentally, physically, your four wheels on your car, then it gets stretched out. It's going to snap, and it's going to fall into the trash can. No, better to have that resiliency built in so that you're stretched. You're stretched, a little uncomfortably far, but it'll come back if you're taking care of yourself. And that's what I'm talking about there. The managing of ourselves has a lot to do with our ability to be able to snap back. It's not being hit. It's not being punched in the nose. It's what you do about it afterwards. And being able to take another punch, and not saying I'm not going to be in the game. I'm so afraid of getting that punch that I'm not going to even show up anymore. What? How is that helping you?
Right. Yeah, it's not helping us at all, is it? His name is Rand Selig. The book, Thriving: How to Create a Healthier, Happier, and More Prosperous Life. You know what I like to say? It's creating a more healthier, happier, and prosperous you. All right. You're listening to him here on A New direction. Hey, folks, Epic Physical Therapy, my physical therapist, I think it should be yours too. Their facility offers the most advanced top of the line equipment like the Ultra G anti-gravity treadmill, the Normatec compression sleeves, Game Ready, my favorite. They are trained and certified, most comprehensive cutting edge treatments available. Blood flow restriction therapy, dry needling, cupping, that's just a few. Listen, when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, your epic results, don't look any further. Go to epicpt.com. It's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft Team Realtors for more than 39 years. They are known as the legends of customer service in the industry. And right now they are looking for new agents. Maybe it's you. If you live in the Research Triangle Park area of Raleigh, North Carolina, and you're looking to hang your license, tell you what, go to lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And you know what? Check them out and then make an appointment to schedule your opportunity to meet with Linda and her team. And why don't you take a look and see if that's a place for you to hang your real estate license as a real estate professional? You're going to love Craft University, one of the best training programs there is out there. Absolutely top notch. So look, it's lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. Go there. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend Rand Selig. His book, Thriving: How to Create a Healthier, Happier, and More Prosperous Life. I'm going to say just a few things, Rand, before about this book, because this is our last segment. And I want to say this. People may look at this book and go, oh, it's thick and it's a lot to read. No, wait. Listen, any one of these chapters can stand alone. I'm just telling you, because if you feel like, okay, I think I got this part of it down pretty well, but maybe I don't have my emotional self down. Maybe I don't have the spiritual part of me down. Or maybe what we're going to cover next in chapter 8, which a lot of people question. I get this question a lot, and I'm sure you do too, Rand. Chapter 8, purpose and meaning. And I am seeing more and more people, and you tell me if you see this or seeing this too. I'm getting more and more questions from people asking me, I don't know what my purpose is. How do I find it?
Yeah. Well, that chapter 8, ends the first section of my book, which is about thriving personally. And I purposely had it come last because I wanted all the other building blocks to come in place. So this big question of what creates purpose and meaning in your life could be dealt with in a serious kind of way. Purpose is something we define for ourselves if we're doing it right. I mean, you can't just say, oh, my purpose is this because my mom and dad told me, or because I watched a movie yesterday and this person had this purpose and I'm just going to grab onto that because that person's cool. Well, if it's good purpose for you, give it a go, give it a whirl. And by the way, purpose can change over time. I've continued to evolve my purpose. And purpose, by the way, is a separate little topic. I don't know if we'll get to it today, but you're creating a legacy along the way. Your purpose can lead to a legacy. And if you're clear about your legacy, you can start living it now. You don't have to have it there on the tombstone. You can be carving your legacy onto hearts now while you're alive. So the great Mark Twain said, the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you figure out why. Well, I think Mark Twain is really on it. I would amend it because I'm an author. I can edit and adjust. I would say that it's not the one day you figure out why, but it could be multiple days over a span of a lifetime. And that's important. That's healthy. If you stick to the one purpose and now you've changed, you've sold your company, you've moved to a different place and everything's different. You've gone through a big transition. You may have lost that purpose. So you got to reinvent yourself, create a new purpose.
Well, I think one of the things when it comes to purpose and meaning is I think oftentimes we are unsure of where to start in this process. And I think one of the things I like to give people is the psychological definition of purpose, and psychological definition of purpose is something, excuse me, that is meaningful to you, that positively impacts the world around you.
Mhm.
And I think,
Mhm.
excuse me, I think what we often uh, do is we focus on passions,
Mhm.
but that's not always a good start. I mean, it can be, passions can have something to do with it. But I don't think we all know what we're always passionate about, because we haven't experienced enough things to know that we are passionate about something else that we have never experienced.
Mhm.
Because you may do something for the first time and go, "Oh my gosh, that was great." I just want to give an example. I have never played pickleball before, right? In fact, Rand, I would tell you that I wasn't sure that it would be a sport for me to play. And my wife and I took a lesson. Doggone it if I don't love that thing. If I don't love pickleball, I absolutely love it. And I can play it. I can just play it and play it and play it. It is, but had I not experienced it, I wouldn't have developed the passion for it. So I can't focus on passions, because I don't even know what I don't know that I may be passionate about. Now, is pickleball going to provide me some meaningful purpose? I don't think so, but that doesn't mean it can't. But it is the tool in the toolbox. At the same time, I believe that I am fulfilling my purpose and meaning in my life, because this show is entitled "A New Direction." Everything I do in my life, my purpose is to help people find a new direction, whether that be in their life, whether that be in their career, whether that be in their business, whether that be in leadership, whether that be in success. Everything for me revolves around, that's my purpose. Now, I may execute it differently,
Yeah.
as in a podcast, speaking on stage, coaching one on one, right? I may execute it differently. So it's not doing, because my purpose, which gives my life so much more meaning, allows me to help as many people as I possibly can in those different modalities. So
Mhm. Mhm.
I think I hear that when you say factors, um, in this chapter, you say factors involved in creating a meaningful life. Developing, and here's what you say: developing a meaningful life involves many options as to what to focus on. Our focus can reflect choices ranging from more to less meaningful, and from things you might consider glamorous to simple. The
Mhm.
more meaning we find in life, the happier we typically feel, and the more often we feel encouraged to pursue even greater meaning and purpose. Talk to us a little bit more as we dig into this, because I think I want to give people hope, and
Mhm.
not let them, and not have them be. I want to give them some resiliency, and I want them to keep pursuing it. So let's give them some practical things from your end.
Well, I appreciate you bringing this hugely important topic up. I've heard so many times, I'm sure your listeners have too, the advice to a young person and finishing high school, or but maybe a little bit later, is find your passion, follow your passion, and I really think that's, as you were saying, Coach Jay. I think that's not necessarily great advice. Passion's too confusing when it comes to things like, what's the difference between that and a hobby? Well, something that you enjoy doing is good. Yes, do things you enjoy doing,
Sure.
but that's not the same as having purpose. What is purpose? Purpose means that you understand a bit about it. Doesn't mean you understand everything. You're still learning and growing about it, but you're willing to make a commitment to it. It's not a casual thing. You're going to come back again and again and again and keep improving as you work forward with that commitment towards your purpose. I think it's really important to write it down. Write down your purpose. My first purpose, I think I can remember. I can remember the evening when I wrote it down, is to reach my potential. And I thought, wow, what a super duper purpose. And then I don't know, I kept on looking at this thing I wrote down, and I said, this is so almost meaningless. It's just so vague. It's, I need to anchor it with some other things. So I continue to work on it, and it continue to evolve, and it continues to evolve. In writing the book, I put in a section about what is my purpose. And I welcome everybody to, use that as a springboard to creating their own statement of purpose. I agree with you too, and I will say it's a bias. It's a bias I have. I freely admit it. That I think really big purpose has to do with being a bit selfless. It's about, as you were saying, also, Coach Jay, about focusing on the other, and that could be the natural world. It could be plants and animals who have no voice, and somebody needs to speak for them. Could be something that the human world has created and worked on, or big challenges. We've got so many enormous challenges in this vast, amazing world we're living in. So any of those and a little slice of that can be something you want to focus on, you want to make a commitment to. But in the process of that, there's a selflessness about it. And I think that adds to purpose. When I talk next week at this retirement home, I'm going to talk about purpose. Now, these are people who are minimum 75. Some people are 100 or more. And I'm going to talk about purpose. And the purpose I'm going to talk about, it's okay. It's a perfectly valid, big purpose to be a kind person to the people around you, to ask them questions, to be interested in their story, to have a smile on your face in that environment. That could be really helpful. To thank the staff for creating the surroundings, the food, the place you live in, functioning in the way it does. Be that person, and that's purposeful. And when you say that's my purpose, I'm going to be that person. Man, salute to you.
We're going to wrap up here. I just want to wrap up with a couple things that you say about this. And you said, and you briefly mentioned it, but I want to make sure people are clear. Here's some steps that Rand gives you. One, write a vision statement and a living legacy, right? Write a vision statement and a living legacy. Two, know your core values and beliefs. And what he's saying here is so true. If you know what your core values are, most of you probably don't. I've been having this conversation more with people, they don't. But when you're out of alignment with your core values, not going to work. And then write out a life purpose. Can change. And then write out a vision statement. Rand, as we wrap up here, what would you add and tell people how to get a hold of us as we close? Go ahead, get a hold of you. Sorry.
I would add that this writing down these things is important to do. Why? Because in the process of writing it down, you figure out what you know about it. What you're a little still maybe a little excuse me, confused about, where maybe there's some inconsistencies. It becomes a draft, a living document that you can continue to play with, and it's just so important to write it down, to have that kind of concreteness to it. So I really encourage. It's kind of a call to action when you do that. And when it comes to the final bit about writing down what your legacy is, okay, so now whatever your age is, and you're very far away, hopefully decades and decades away from the time when your physical self disappears and you're in that spiritual realm that you were talking about. That's a long way away, but that doesn't mean you can't write your legacy and live it now. Be that person. I write my legacy in the book. It's about being, having excellence, having purpose, being encouraging, and living love as a way of being. That's what my legacy. I'm trying to bring that everywhere I go, so that people's, I'm carving onto people's hearts and not waiting for that tombstone marble thing.
Beautiful. Rand, tell people how to get a hold of you.
I'd love to hear from you. You can go to my website, Rand Selig, Selig.com. And there's a page there where you say connect with Rand, and you can write me and say, hey, I love chapter X, or hey, I don't understand chapter Y, or I, have something else that you missed.
Great.
Anything, or invite me. I'm doing a lot of talking, and would love to engage. That's what I'm really all about right now, is engaging with people around the themes, the so many themes in this book of being on the path to living a full life of thriving.
That's awesome. Rand, stay with me. Folks, this is a show, you know what I say to you every week, right? You're in control of three things: your attitude, your effort, and your resiliency. Fact of the matter is, life is not always going to deal us the cards that we want. In fact, oftentimes it doesn't. But you are in control of those three things, and that is your attitude, as difficult as it may be. Your effort is tied to your excellence. So how excellent will you be at any given moment? And yeah, we're going to get punched in the mouth or the stomach every now and then, but it's up to you to get up. That's your resiliency. Take control of those things. I know you can. I'll be back next week with another great guest. It's going to be another great book, which automatically means it's another great show. As I say to you, it's this, and that is, you had a lot of choices. You chose us. I am so grateful to each and every one of you for making the choice to choose a new direction, and me and my guest. Thank you so much. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube and a positive review wherever you're listening to the show. As I say to you all over the world, you know what that is? Ciao, everybody.